fans, welcome back to Room 237, back with another review. As I continue my kind of marathon of more extreme horror, more extreme films, and for this review we're going back to Germany. Only this is not a review of a film by Olaf Ittenbach, whom I've done a few reviews of at this point. It's actually a filmmaker whose I've done two reviews so far outside of this marathon, and this is one, and I'll be doing one other one. But it is a popular German filmmaker known for his shock films. He only made really four, but and I hope I pronounce this correctly, Jorg Buttgereit, or Jorg Buttgereit, probably one of them. Most well known for the director of the Necromantic films, and this is his second film from 1990. I've seen 89, 90. I read somewhere specifically it was sometime in 90, so I'm going to say 90, but Der Todesking, or The Death King. This is the DVD from Cult Epics. Yes, I am aware that Arrow has a DVD and a Blu-ray. Yes, but I can still live with DVD. Store I shop at, this is the only one they could get, and it was cheaper. I'm totally okay with this. It has all the same features. Has the making of, all trailers for all his films, his hour-long documentary Corpse Fucking Art, which I think is about the making of the Necromantic films, and comes with a soundtrack. So, I mean, I'm totally cool with having this release. Plus, Cult Epics did the Necromantic 1 and 2 Blu-ray set that I have. So, yeah, written and directed by JB. I'm just going to call him JB. Edited by JB and Manfred O. Jelinski, who I believe he worked with JB on all his films. Music by Herman Kopp, John Boy Walton, The Angelus, and Daktari Lorenz, which Daktari Lorenz, I believe, was the male lead in Necromantic, and did the special effects. I believe he did special effects. I believe he did here, too. And produced by Manfred O. Jelinski, as was, I believe, the rest of his films. And it runs at a brisk 76 minutes. Now, the thing about this film is, well, if you're going in it for extreme content, like I was expecting another Necromantic level of extreme stuff. This doesn't have that, but it does have a dark, depressing tone throughout. It is made on a similar budget. It has a similar look to it, which I do like. But it does have a very just grim feel throughout the whole thing. But one thing I did like was, because as much as I love Necromantic, and I do love that movie, that's still my favorite JB film. Which just to mention it real quick, by the end of this marathon, I would have had all his main films. He did Necromantic 1, Der Todesking, Necromantic 2, and a film called Schramm, or Scrum. Scrum will be here shortly. It's on order. And then after that, he mostly just did documentaries. And prior to Necromantic, he just did short films. So, I will have all his films. I'm pretty sure Necromantic will always be my favorite one. But the thing about Necromantic is, he set out to just make the most straightforward exploitation film he could. Just a couple finding a dead body, keeping it, having sex with it. No meaning, no message, nothing to look deep into at all, just shock and exploitation. And he succeeded. This film, his second film, he is definitely going for something. There is something he's trying to say, mostly about life, death, and suicide. From what I've heard, because I've heard Schramm is more graphic and extreme than this. that this is his least grotesque, least shocking and extreme, but his most artistic. And it does feel like he's making a sort of art house film, or art house for 1990 for this budget. And I do think he succeeds. It does look good. It does have an art house feel to it. There really is no story. It's kind of an anthology. It just takes place over 7 days. Each segment is a day of the week, Monday through Sunday, and each day is a different person committing suicide somehow. And it doesn't really say if it's pro or anti-suicide. There is one segment where someone's reading about suicide, and it kind of glorifies it. Talks about the legacy your non-existent or unnoticed life will have if you commit suicide. So, but I don't think that's the message of the whole film. And it's bookended by this little girl with the pad of paper drawing like a stick skeleton figure with a crown that says "Dare Todesking." That's the absolute bookend. But there's the through line through the movie is this body that we see. It's it's kind of David Lynchian with just how it looks. Like the opening of the movie, coming down is like this body curled up in the fetal position, a naked man curled up in the fetal position. Comes down, then he just like rolls over, lays on his back, and then he stays there. And then through time lapse, we see him decompose and rot and go through putrefaction, which is one of the cooler aspects of the movie. That's probably the most grotesque or extreme, other than the film within the film, Nazi exploitation film in the second segment. But yeah, I really like the look of that corpse and the time lapse, and it just, you can tell it's on dirt, but everything around it is just solid black, like just a void of everything. Uh, I like the time lapse. It's in between each segment, and even some of the segments it's interjected throughout. It looks decent for the effects. I mean, the only thing that doesn't look natural would be, because I guess during the making of, because what they did was they made a cast of a body, sort of like half, like split in half, and just almost like your bottom half is in the ground. Filled it with all the stuff that maggots are attracted to. Put it in like some dirt or on some dirt, and then they left it somewhere for 5 weeks with these cameras to take one picture every hour, and they just left it, and they let the maggots do their thing. But over time, the material that made the skin got dry, so it would like dry crack and split. So that looks a little unnatural, but it still looks good. It still looks rotten and creepy. Of course, all the maggots turn into flies, and I think that's what JB said. That's why some of the bones move around. Like, it almost looks like a time jump, like bodies laid here, but then the more it decomposes, the more like separates. It goes like this. I love the up close shots of just the rotten intestines. There's even this one frame where the skull is like sinking in the ground a bit, and then the eyeball just oozes out. So I love that effect. The time lapse looks awesome. So yeah, that's interjected throughout the film. This is only the final shot of the entire film, but each segment, and he really just wanted to capture like the final moments of these people. We don't get any character development or even really the names of any characters. Like, it opens up, the first Monday opens up with the guy going home from work, calls his boss, quits. And there is this cool thing it does where the camera just pans around the room. Like, he'll be at his desk doing something, and then he's like sitting on his bed, and then it pans over here, and he's feeding his fish, and it just keeps panning around. And he probably was running from one section to the other, just to show time going by. There's a calendar on one wall, and every time we pass it, another day has gone by. And then he goes to take a bath, takes a bunch of pills, and he slips under the water. This yellow comes out, and he's dead. And then we see his goldfish sink to the bottom, like kind of showing his goldfish was the closest thing to him, and they both died at the same time. Second segment, Tuesday, this guy goes to a video store with a necromantic poster and necromantic on the rack, so advertising his first film. He rents this sort of Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS type of film that JB made. In fact, JB is the guy that's tied up in it. The male love interest for Necromantic 2 is the Nazi in the film. We do see castration via hedge clippers, and then a bloody swastika drawn on his chest. So next to the decomposing corpse, that's probably the most grotesque or graphic bit. But I thought this was cool, and so the guy watching it, his girlfriend comes home, she gives him shit about something. He takes a pistol out, shoots her, and then he takes a picture of her off the wall, breaks it, takes the frame, and puts it over her blood spatter on the wall. I thought that was pretty cool. And then the camera pans back, like, close up on the guy, pans back so that he's on the TV. And then we pan over, we just see 2 feet hanging, like someone hung themselves. Some people think that it seems to be that guy that hung himself. I think the entire segment was something someone was watching and it's someone unrelated. Wednesday is probably the longest one because some of these are really short. It's just a man and a woman in a park. They don't know each other. Pouring rain. The guy sitting on the bench, woman comes in, and he's just telling her this story about how his wife would bleed every time they had sex, and he was worried about her health, but she wasn't, and she kept saying, I love you, don't worry about it, it's not your fault, it's okay, don't worry about it. Doctor said she was fine, she kept saying, don't worry about it. He was constantly worried, and her kindness and unworry about her health drove him nuts that he killed her. But the way it tells it, I thought was cool, because as he gets to that part in his story, I mean, he goes through like 2 pages of a monologue. He just, like, it's a long monologue he has to go through. The camera's on him, and the vertical hold gets let go, so the film's kind of going like this, which also distorts the sound a bit. And even the subtitles, because it's in German, subtitles don't get jumbled, but they skip. So it'd be like, and then me doing this is the film going like that. And the subtitles would be like, and then that's when I took dot 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 and I removed her head. So I thought that was cool. It's like the subtitles are getting messed up with the audio. And then she just takes out a pistol, puts it to his head, pulls the trigger, but she didn't cock it. So he takes it from her, cocks it, puts it in his mouth. We pan over to like this kind of cherub statue or whatever. And we get just a little bit of blood on it. Thursday, I'll probably say is the most artistic and kind of interesting segment, which at first I thought it was the end credits, because it just has these names and an occupation. Like, you'll have a name and it'll say like custodian, name, actor, name, landlord. So I thought it was the end credits. I was like, holy shit, that was a fast movie. But we're looking up at this bridge, And then, like, we cut back to the decomposing body, then we cut back. And it's this bridge in Germany that way up at the top, there's like a walkway that goes around it with like a huge opening that's like a huge oval right in the middle. And it just goes all the way down. Get this great shot of it swooping just right over the railing. It's like right in the middle of the opening of the bridge between the two railings. Goes the whole length of the bridge. You know, you can really see how high you are. Goes all the way to the railing on the other side. And then that's it. The segment ends. It is basically, you really get the feeling of what it's trying to say just by showing the bridge, showing how high it is, and with those names, saying these are people that have jumped off that bridge to commit suicide, which is kind of one of the darker segments, I thought. Thursday, I kind of didn't really know what was going on. It's just like a woman in her apartment. Thursday was the Friday. And well, I'm just reading what this says. She looks out her window, and across the courtyard sees a young couple kissing in their window. Then she sits down, reads this chain letter, encouraging people to commit suicide. Then she falls asleep, has a dream about when she was a kid, walked in on her parents having sex. She wakes up, walks to the window, doesn't see anyone at that window, and then we see the couple in their bed, dead, with some blood on the sheets. Then Saturday was a woman, it shows people setting up this projector, then watching the reels, and it starts off with this woman reading this thing to a girl, which is that thing that says, if you commit suicide, you'll be kind of immortalized. Like, if your life was boring and unnoticed, if you commit suicide, you'll be immortalized, have a legacy, kind of reach like a martyrdom in a way. So she reads that to this young girl, and then it cuts outside the film to her putting on like this camera harness, like for this big ass like news camera. She puts a harness on, straps the camera on. Then we cut back to the footage that the men are watching, and it just shows her because the camera's on her shoulder. Goes up to this guy, shoots him, and then goes into this concert, this small concert, where, who was it? D'Arste, if I pronounce that correctly? Or the drummer from D'Arste, Bela B, he's a guitarist and singer. She shoots the guitarist and singer of this band, then shoots some of the crowd. Another guy has a gun. They get in a shootout. And that's Saturday. And then Sunday is a guy waking up, and he has like this trauma. He's screaming, he's sobbing, he's hitting his head. There's this cool thing where he's laying on the ground, and acting wise, this is probably the best actor because he does look like he's having some kind of episode. Laying on the floor, like looking up at the ceiling, and I mean, his eyes are crazy, and the camera's going like this, and he just keeps slamming his head against the wall, pretty much inducing suicide by brain damage. And then after that, we just cut back to the little girl drawing the Death King for the beginning of the movie. Also, by this point, the corpse is completely decomposed that we keep cutting back to. And then she looks at the camera and says, this is the Death King. He makes people want to not live anymore. Then we see this actual photo. And then it ends with the end credits with a bunch of pictures of children with like a dark sepia tone. End credits with JB's handwriting, just like necromantic. And that's the movie. That's literally the whole movie. Um, I can definitely see what he's going for. Where Necromantic was just as straightforward exploitation and shock as you can get. And that's one reason why I appreciate Necromantic. I dock points for movies like Serbian Film because I feel like they're trying too hard. But then, at least Necromantic embraces that it's just trying to be a shock film. I also just really like the movie. So for a second film, I can see why he might want to do something with more meaning or more substance, or maybe even try to go a bit artsy or art housey. And it does feel like an art house film. It does. It does have some, I don't really want to say beautiful shots, but it does have some very well done, cool ideas. I mean, stuff we've seen before, like panning back, then revealing that what we were watching was on a TV. The shot of the camera going over the railing of the bridge and just getting those heights and just that smooth shot. Uh, Showing some of the deaths off camera, or the guy shooting himself, but we see the blood spatter on the statue. Or, suicide by watching it through a film and through POV. And I like the idea of, okay, it's all these different suicides, but also shown in a different way. Like, it doesn't feel like your typical anthology where it shows people die. It's hard to explain what I mean. Well, I like how each suicide either we see after the fact, or it's implied, or we do see it happen. But it is kind of hard to tell like, if his meaning or what he's trying to say, like, pro or anti-suicide, is he saying that, there's this thing, this person, like how the Sandman puts you to sleep. Does the Death King really just make you want to kill yourself? It's kind of fuzzy on what ultimately the message is, but I definitely see, like, and appreciate the effort for trying to do an art house film, and I do think it was interesting. It it never got boring for me. Uh, I like, you can definitely tell all the different things he was trying to do. I loved the time lapse of the decomposing corpse. I thought that looked great, especially with the effects. Yeah, the skin looked a little fake, but you know, I the real maggots and everything. I thought it looked really good. And yeah, I mean, is it as good as either of the necromantic films? No. Even German art house films from this period, is it as good as Begotten? Absolutely not. But it does have a somber tone to it. Uh, I mean, it kind of has a nihilistic tone, really. But yeah, definitely not as extreme as I was expecting. I was expecting, being a JB film, I thought it was going to be at something like necromantic, but since it's not, I can't appreciate him trying to do something, trying to be a little artsy with it, give a little substance. And I can say I liked it. I did enjoy it. I can see why people might not. Either they might be triggered or offended because suicide is tough stuff. That could be the case, or maybe they were really pissed off that it's not as extreme as necromantic. But I can definitely see how he would end up in the realm of documentaries after Scrum. And I would probably have to say my favorite segment was Thursday, the one with the bridge, because it was able to get the point across, have that sort of emotional tone, that somber feeling, that downer nihilistic kind of vibe that the rest of the film has, without showing anything. Just giving us a bridge, showing us the heights, the music, and just listing all these names of just all these people that have done it. That I don't know if those people are in real life or for the film, but in any case, I do think Thursday was the most effective. Probably the most artsy as well, but maybe the decomposing body is to show no matter what happens, whether we die naturally, whether we commit suicide, regardless of how we commit suicide, this is what's going to happen to us if we don't get cremated. But we're all just going to rot and go away eventually, regardless of who we were, what we did, or what happened to us. We're all just going to rot away. I don't know if it's that nihilistic, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, I kind of have a penchant for art house horror anyway, but yeah, I liked this. I'm excited for Schraub. Should be here soon, so then I'll have all his major films or his films. But yeah, got more extreme films coming, so stay tuned for those, and thank you for watching.